Nobody even likes Dave Silva.
I hate him.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Is it real this time?
It's real this time.
We're sitting here talking about, hey, I got an idea. How about we hit record? How about we start this thing? Let's go ahead and do it. And the guy that's supposed to be mash the button. It's a little red button that says record on it. The guy that's supposed to hit that, he's just talking to us. Oh, yeah, see, Mr. Conrad, I will get your socks done right away. But it's like, never hits record.
And it's funny because as you were saying before we went live, like when you make a list of all of his duties, like number 1 is click record. Number 2 is click stop. And there's not much else on the list.
Mr. Conrad socks. Take Mr. Bruce's boots off. I mean, it's not that fucking difficult.
It's a shame.
Right. But number 1 and 2. Record. El Stapo.
Will you stop?
What?
Boys and girls.
He did it to us. We're having a goddamn conversation between us, and then he's having to goddamn translate. We're speaking English. Okay? I'm speaking Texan. You're speaking hillbilly.
Yes.
And he comes in to translate. It's like, I fucking am fluent in hillbilly. Conrad is fluent in Texan.
I am.
We're speaking English here amongst us.
Yeah.
Different dialects, same goddamn language. And he comes up like we don't know what the hell we're talking about to each other.
Well, we're glad that you guys got to have a peek behind the curtain. Dave Silva, first of his name from Silva House. Hey, we're talking Sergeant Slaughter here today on Something to Wrestle. And Bruce is a little punch drunk, delirious, sleep deprived. I mean, what a big weekend, man.
I'm a little tired. That's what I am. I'm a little tired. I mean,
SmackDown across the pond and then a monster pay-per-view Bash in Berlin. Buddy, I know that this ain't necessarily up to you, but Lord, I love those afternoon pay-per-views. Thank you very much. It was a fun day.
Well, it would be great if it was in the afternoon where I was.
Yeah, it was here in Alabama, and man, it was awesome. Saturday was like, dude, Christmas. College football is back, and you got some WWE PLE action. It was a good day.
You'll know this, so I don't even want to look it up, and I meant to look at Notre Dame and A&M. Who won?
Oh, it went to the very end, and Notre Dame pulled it out. Huge, gigantic win. Really? Notre Dame got the win, of course.
Oh, at A&M, that's tremendous. I got to call my Aggie friends because they're still in, they're all proud and shit. One of their, so it goes Texas A&M went to the Olympics and they were so proud of them because they won a gold medal. They took back, had a big ceremony at A&M, and then, they got it bronzed.
Oh my, I love you for that. I didn't see that coming. That was awesome. Yeah, man.
That's out there to all my Aggie friends because I got a bunch of them, and I like to, whoop.
I love it. Well, we're going to have a lot of fun today talking about Sergeant Slaughter. We love talking about the way wrestling used to be. Bruce, we're going to talk about the WWF run. But I'm curious, did you ever, when you were growing up as a wrestling fan, running around the Bosch estate, did you ever cross paths with Sergeant Slaughter, or did you just keep up with him in the magazines, things like that?
No, I just saw him in the magazines from his, I guess, Carolina days and New York days and all that. But I'd never really crossed paths with him. I want to say we had him booked for a Superdome show in New Orleans, but something didn't happen there. And I don't think, it wasn't like he didn't show. It just was the booking fell through type of thing. But no, I never really crossed paths with it. But I watched his stuff in New York on the Madison Square Garden network and just thought, because he's a big guy and his promos were great and just what a heel and what a baby face. All in the same. And I didn't meet him until much later in my career and his actually. But I will say this off the top, man. God, Bob Remus, hell of a guy. Just hell of a guy. And I understood, you would be very hard pressed to find somebody that would go, oh yeah, Sergeant Slaughter, Bob Remus. Yeah, no, he's a jerk. I don't know anybody who thinks Bob's a jerk. He's peculiar in a good way. No, he's just a wonderful, wonderful human being.
just to add some context, and you and I've never really talked about this, but, and I know you weren't there, but I'm just asking you to sort of guess. As far as the way the company looked before Hulk Hogan joined and Hulkamania ran wild, I mean, Sergeant Slaughter and Jimmy Snuka were two of the marquee talents for the McMahon family, were they not?
Two of the biggest stars in the business, period. Not just New York. Jimmy Snuka and Sergeant Slaughter were two of the biggest baby faces anywhere in the world. You Andre in there as well, but Jimmy and Sarge were, good God, man. And arguably, I think Sarge had the most mass appeal along with Andre.
Well, I don't think there's much argument for that, because he actually starts to make some pretty good money and makes a name for himself outside of wrestling through the G.I. Joe franchise. As a little kid, man, Sergeant Slaughter and G.I. Joe, dude, that was the jam. I had that action figure you're seeing on YouTube. They even had one where it came with a little tank deal. It was amazing. I was such a big fan of the G.I. Joe, the cartoon, and of course the WWF. And boy, this just checked all the boxes for me. You were an adult, of course. What did you think of the G.I. Joe experiment, if you will, with Sergeant Slaughter?
It was a natural fit. And Sergeant Slaughter was the right guy for that, because so many kids had already idolized him out of New York and the exposure that Garden Network and USA Network was getting at the time. Because when Vince started to expand, Sarge was still there. And so Sarge was getting that national exposure, and kids that were wrestling fans now had an action figure of Sergeant Slaughter, because that was, this was before LJN and those action figures with Hulk and Iron Sheik and Nikolai, and it was Hillbilly Jim. I think those were the first four. But Sergeant Slaughter was an action figure before that, and Sarge was a guy that they watched on TV as a wrestler, and now he's got his own G.I. Joe, and it's like, oh my God, G.I. Joe and Sergeant Slaughter? As a kid, I don't know how it can possibly get any bigger than that. As a kid, for me, we got G.I. Joes, and we would make them wrestlers. But it was just generic G.I. Joe. And then we would color stuff on them, which really pissed my mom off. But yeah. That was our wrestlers that we could play with. You didn't have a ring, you had to make shit and everything. So
my understanding is that there was a new G.I. Joe figure every year from 85 to 89 for Sergeant Slaughter. I know that this predates you, but what do you think the impasse was about when Sergeant Slaughter left the company? Maybe Vince didn't want him to do G.I. Joe, or do you know any of those details? Has that ever come up?
Yeah, it's money. I mean, it was just straight up money. Sarge wanted to be able to have the G.I. Joe deal and also do WWE. And Vince wanted him to do WWE and felt that if he was going to do G.I. Joe like everybody else, that would go through the WWE. And Sarge didn't feel the same way. So their disagreement was about money and about rights and about licensing and all of those good things. And Sarge felt, as he had done, that he could continue this G.I. Joe franchise and continue to monetize that on his own and didn't need Vince or WWE.
What I think is interesting that I don't know that ever gets discussed, because when I started doing some research on this episode is when it really sort of clicked for me. Almost everyone who had a falling out with the company or Vince personally eventually came back. Whether it was Roddy Piper or Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior or Bret Hart or whoever.
Bruce Prichard.
Bruce Prichard. But I think Sergeant Slaughter might be one of the first ones to have this breakup with Vince and then come back. You're a part of the company when the return happens. How do you remember? I mean, the narrative out there was, hey, he wants to finish his in-ring career and then become a road agent. So that almost sounds like Sarge contacted Vince. This is sort of chicken and the egg, I guess. But do you remember how that came to be? Did Sarge want to come back, or did Vince have an idea to bring Sarge back?
Sarge wanted to come back. Sarge called Vince and his deal with G.I. Joe was up, and he was looking to, end his career, wanted to end it there. And it was a very cordial conversation. We all talked about it and thought, this great idea, bring him back. But I think, I don't think it was me. I want to say it was probably Pat or whoever, but it was how do we bring him back? Sergeant Slaughter, you got Hulk, you got Warrior. Do we need another top babyface like that? And we all talked about what a great heel Sarge was. Tremendous heel. So do you bring him back as a heel? There was a feeling when Sarge left that he could never be a heel again. However, in his heart of hearts, I think that Sarge realized that he, was much better as a heel. Great as babyface. I'm not taking away anything he did as babyface, but Sarge loved being a heel. He truly embraced it and was very good at it. So we started talking about, how do you bring him back? And you bring him back by, here he is, and he's kind of gone astray. So it's all good.
So Bruce, I think the timeline lines up where around the same time that Sarge's contract is ending with Hasbro, the WWF is doing their action figure line with Hasbro. Like, I think they're around the same time. We don't normally talk about toy deals and things like that here, but do you remember how that Hasbro deal came together? Because it did feel like a big switch to go from LJN to Hasbro. I didn't grow up with LJNs. I grew up with Hasbro. So that's really my first memory of action figures. I really got into the Hasbros, and I was a big G.I. Joe guy. So I don't know, maybe I was just part of their customer base, but how did that whole Hasbro WWF relationship come to be, as best you can recall?
When the LJN deal kind of fell apart, I think LJN got a little greedy, and the LJN deal in its infancy was, I think both companies needed each other. LJN was not an established, big time. They weren't Mattel. They weren't Hasbro. And they helped make WWE. I think WWE helped make LJN. So now, they're knocking on their door, and they have a track record. So coming in, it was a matter of the deal was up, and LJN was not in a position to make as lucrative an offer as the other guys.
Well, we know that the story is going to go pretty much how you said. We're going to bring in Sergeant Slaughter as a babyface, and then eventually we're going to turn him heel. This is an interesting time for the company, because it does feel like, when all this is happening, it's sort of the summer of 1990. What was the company like on the heels of WrestleMania 6? Like, with the benefit of hindsight, we could see that WrestleMania 3 was huge. WrestleMania 4 may have been down a bit. WrestleMania 5 was major box office, but there's been a lot of talk that maybe that Warrior experiment wasn't drawing as well as we had hoped. It felt like for a while now we had been trying to find who is going to be next in line behind Hulk Hogan. But in the summer of 1990, what was the feeling in the company that we're still trying with Warrior, or, hey, we got to get this thing back on Hulk? Or what do you remember that being like in the summer of 1990?
Oh, the feeling was definitely, what have we done? Going into Ultimate Warrior, being the champion and being the guy to carry the mantle, and everybody looked at it as, man, he's going to replace Hulk Hogan. There were quite a few naysayers. Anybody that had been in the ring with Warrior, anybody that had interacted with Warrior, kind of felt that, okay, you don't have the ring skills, doesn't have the temperament, doesn't have the personality, and from a business standpoint was somewhat difficult to deal with. Hulk, on the other side, and look, other side, Hulk didn't have great ring skills. Warrior had amazing charisma. Hulk had amazing charisma. Hulk had the experience on his side. Hulk also had the business acumen from being in the business as long as he had as well. So Hulk, whether you want to call it politics or whatever you want to call it, Hulk knew how to navigate the waters of the business, of the wrestling business, but also the business world itself, and dealing with everybody outside, and knew that, by God, when he was on, he was on. Hulk Hogan, you could not turn off, because when he was out in public, he was still Hulk Hogan.
Right.
Looks like Hulk Hogan. And he was on 24 hours a day. The Warrior was expected to be on 24 hours a day, but he hated that part of it. He hated the public. He hated dealing with people. So, all of these things are starting to come, to a head, where all these things that had been talked about prior to making him the guy became, oh shit. Oh, that really is an issue. And, it just wasn't the same, man. It wasn't the same. The things that were easy for Hulk to do were now very difficult to get Warrior to do. And arguably, Warrior did not do it nearly as well as Hulk did. And the cooperation, this was work. This was work again. Whereas, with Hulk, it was collaborative, and Hulk wanted it as bad as everybody else did. So he did everything else. You look at the guys that truly made it. Those are the ones that worked as hard and even harder once they hit it to stay there and to do more than those that felt they deserved it. I think John Layfield used to say, he goes, they were born on third and thought they hit a play or triple. You know what I meant?
Yeah.
That triple play, that's on the melted fillers, right?
Triple play is when you get 3 outs in the same baseball play. You see,
that's what he did. He was out. Fuck him.
Bruce is the only guy I've taken to a football game before, and then he yelled home run in the middle of the game. Hey,
when they kick the thing up in the air and the guy catches it, it's a home run, right?
I also appreciated the way you approached strangers at the football game and said, I don't know how you watch this. That's all fake, right? Only Bruce Prichard.
That was only in the club.
Only Bruce Prichard. Hey, let's talk a little bit about Sarge here, because, and I'm not trying to gotcha, but a few weeks ago when we were talking about Diamond Dallas Page, you said, hey, the WWF audience didn't know them. I kind of wonder, since Sarge had been gone for so long, at the time, did you realize that a lot of the audience wouldn't be familiar with him? Because the audience of the WWF in 1990 is largely made up of little kids, so they probably wouldn't have seen something he did 7 years or more. Half of them weren't even alive at that point. Or is that how you learned, hey, they don't know him, and then you applied that moving forward?
No, I think they did know him. So when you're talking about kids, on the G.I. Joe, look, the G.I. Joe reruns, the cartoon and all that, that was incredible distribution. And if you want to compare it to Diamond Dallas Page and WCW, the G.I. Joe exposure probably was bigger and more than the WWE exposure. So that's apples and pomegranates. So Sarge coming in was all to, I guess, the new fan would have been like, oh yeah, it's G.I. Joe, Sergeant Slaughter. But to the WWE fan, if you're a true WWE fan, he was a major player in WWE years before. So it wasn't like he was coming from the Carolinas or Texas or anything like that. It was, he had been a mainstay. He was a legend in WWE lore already. Then he became, G.I. Joe, Sergeant Slaughter, made him, in my opinion, even bigger.
Talk to me a little bit about the concern for the in-ring work. I know that maybe sounds silly, but people get older. If you're not doing it all the time, maybe you're not as calloused. Maybe you're a little rusty. Maybe you don't look like you used to look. Were any of these things a concern with Sarge, that perhaps he had lost a step after so much time away from the company?
Not really. And I think it was evident when he got into the ring and he came back and was working, and he was a little heavier, maybe a little slower, maybe. Yeah. But he got right back and he got himself in great shape. And I think he was just as good as he always was.
He used to do quote unquote interviews, and we all know what this was back in that era of the quote unquote after mags. But he would do interviews where he's calling out Hulk Hogan while he was away from the company, saying the reason he left is because Hulk Hogan would never give him a title shot, that sort of thing. Did you start when Sarge comes back? Do you already have Hogan in mind? Like, hey, this is the direction we'll go. Like, you just knew, hey, we need someone for Hogan to work with, and by God, this can be the guy.
We had Tugboat.
So the plan was just to put him with Nikolai and just see how it goes.
We had Sheik Tugboat.
Wait, was that going to be the deal? Sheik Tugboat and Sergeant Slaughter at some point? Like, I mean, I know.
No. God, it was going to be, look, man, I think Vince had his way in his mind early on that it was going to be Sheik Tugboat. When just the little skirmish in the Middle East was not even anywhere intensified, but you did have a heel there in Saddam Hussein, and Tugboat being Hulk's best friend. That was Hulk's program. But without a doubt, man, I think that when Sarge came back in the reaction, and people did know it, did get a great reaction, that, man, you take Sarge, you turn him heel, and you put him against Hulk Hogan, the greatest American hero, and Sergeant Slaughter, G.I. Joe Sergeant Slaughter, against the real American and Hulk Hogan. That was, man, that's a natural. And I think that was one of those things, maybe in Vince's head, that he thinks, okay, I can get there at WrestleMania 8, and holy cow, it'll be incredible. But, as things got on, it was like, this Tugboat thing ain't going to work. And switch very quickly to Sergeant Slaughter.
I know you said 8, you probably meant 7, whatever.
I meant 8.
Okay.
No, I'm saying if the Tugboat thing had worked out,
right,
Tugboat would have been at 7.
Gotcha.
With Hulk. Then you would have like a full year and a half to build Sarge to go to 8 with Hulk. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Don't rush it.
Yes.
If you don't need to. But the quickly is kind of like, you know what, man, they're not buying Tugboat is this larger than life, which he is larger than life and a wonderful guy as well. But it's just wasn't connecting with the audience in the way that he needed to connect to make that turn on Hulk really mean something.
When you're having these initial discussions about bringing in Sarge, is the first idea, hey, we'll just lean into Sarge sort of hammering America's Gone Soft, and then this sort of enemy of the state thing sort of was born out of the skirmish in the Middle East, and it just was a happy accident, the timing lined up? Or
yeah, I mean, it was. And I also think that because of the sentiments towards Saddam Hussein, the sentiments towards the Middle East at that time, that there was a new feeling of patriotism in the country. And it was something that had kind of been lacking. I think the last before that was really Gaddafi. And this was different, man. There was a feeling, there was a new feeling of patriotism in the country. So what if you take one of their own, one of our very own, and he feels that, no, your patriotism isn't true. It's not real. You're not a real patriot because you're not out there fighting. And that turncoat, it just felt better. And it was different than anything that had traditionally been done in the business, but it was still being based off of the anti-American sentiment. And had not been done. It certainly hadn't been done with anyone the likes of Sergeant Slaughter. who was the, the ultimate American babyface. By God, it doesn't get any more red, white, and blue than Sergeant Slaughter.
You guys are going to tape a challenge and a Superstars in Springfield and then Providence. And this is where we would see Sergeant Slaughter appear with you as Brother Love, of course. And he has a confrontation with Nikolai Volkov. And it's written here, Sergeant Slaughter debuted and got good heat here because Brother Love was on his side. And he had a confrontation with Nikolai Volkov. But Slaughter looked real bad and got no crowd reaction without Brother Love's help. That was a report from the live taping. But the actual report, when it aired on TV, said this was reminiscent of the classic Brother Love with Morton Downey and Roddy Piper from WrestleMania in the way it dragged and how bad it was. Slaughter said things that should have gotten heat, but didn't. They're going to have a harder time with this guy than I thought, at least from the reaction here. This segment was a bomb. Matt Watch at the time, which was Steve Beverly's newsletter, said, Sarge gives Bruce the proverbial hug. Vince should have ordered this one cut in half. The 8-minute segment dragged and here's the deal. They're all saying it's an entire bomb and it has nothing to do with you or Brother Love or that character. Fans just aren't clicking with Sarge. You were there. When you're there in the segment doing it live, did you feel like it was working or did you feel like, boy, this is dragging?
It was dragging. I mean, it was dragging. You're out there and you're feeling it. But I think that the reason it was dragging is we were trying really hard to, you don't like this guy. Please don't like this guy. And I think it even drug down further because you got Nikolai out there. Again, Nikolai in his day was one of the nastiest, biggest heels this business has ever seen. And your roles are reversed, same opponents. But now I got the Russian telling me how great America is. And now I got the American telling me how soft America is. Crowd didn't want that. So he did not have a strong antagonist, he being Sarge. Nikolai was not that, major strong antagonist. I'm going to get behind Sergeant Slaughter to beat Nikolai Volkov when I had already seen almost everybody else already beat Nikolai. Nikolai was in the twilight of his career. And I'd seen a lot of Sergeant Nikolai too. So yeah, it just, they didn't want that. They told us that, and in their response to it. So we did everything that we could by rubbing him up with me and letting him know this is a horrible human being because
he's friends with Brother
my friend.
Yeah. The only way to let someone know that you're a terrible person is to make them on-screen friends with Bruce Prichard.
Yeah, exactly. You understand that.
I understand that very well. I've gotten so much heat from being your friend.
Yeah.
There's a report.
Vice versa. I mean,
of course. Yeah. We're both just heat seeking missiles every which way we go.
Yeah. You and your con man fucking, all your con man shit. God damn.
Boy, I'd love to learn.
Horrible human being.
I'd love to learn more about this con man shit, but I can't because you're busy burying everybody full time.
Exactly. That's what I do.
Yes.
Is it raining here?
Yes, it is raining. Cats and dogs, literally. Hey, Sergeant Slaughter is the greatest general since brother General Saddam Hussein. That's something, brother.
Saddam Hussein.
I mean,
the great General Saddam Hussein, greatest natural leader. You want to know? So why? There was heat, man. And there was, again, we're in uncharted waters. So Sarge being, somewhat of a sympathizer, people didn't like that. That part they didn't like. I'm beyond the Nikolai stuff, just to where we really started getting into the I am so sorry I am apologizing about my voice. Sorry. But the sympathizers of people did not like, and they felt that part. And Okerlund did not want to be out in the ring with Sarge to do interviews. That's why so much was done with Sarge. I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I believe that even me doing that line might have been backstage, because there was just so much heat anytime we brought up Saddam Hussein. So it was, I know I did, the Great American thing and all that shit with him at SummerSlam. And that was, that was good. That was fun. And we had a lot of heat with that, but it was, there was a reason. Sarge, they wanted Sarge wearing bulletproof vests. They wanted me to wear a bulletproof vest. And we both refused. And I just felt, and I underestimated this, hindsight being 2020, I underestimated it a little bit, I think, because my thing was, I thought, you know what, our fans are sophisticated enough and educated enough to know that, hey, this is entertainment. But then never being in a place of, Vietnam War, that's different. My brothers went to war in Vietnam. My dad was 23 years in the Army and things of that nature. But in my adult lifetime, this was getting serious. It just was a different feel for everybody. And, at this point, I'm 26, 27 years old, whatever it is, I'm invincible. Shoot me. I don't care. I'll just come back as babyface, or I'll rise from hell, whatever the hell it takes. But I didn't take it seriously. I took it as in our world, I was so immersed that they have to understand we're working here.
Right.
We're just working to piss you off. But it got a little crazy. This was kind of the beginning of it starting to get a little crazy.
Well, I'll tell you what else is crazy. Football. You think that quarterback's going to throw for more than 300 yards? How about that receiver in Miami grabbing a touchdown? Check out DraftKings Pick 6 with the newest way to compete against others and play fantasy football to win cash with DraftKings. Just pick a player and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like yards, touchdowns, catches, and more. Get your picks right and you'll win cash. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code STW. That's code STW for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed, plus 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. This offer expires September 19th, only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccp.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. 1 per new customer. Reward issued at $50 in non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 6 months. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. NFL Plus Premium terms at NFL.com/terms. Hey, Bruce, let's talk about, there is a report, and I didn't see it, so I'm just going to ask. But there was a report that one of these early vignettes that were done had Sergeant Slaughter pointing a weapon at the camera, and I guess some people were up in arms about that. Obviously that sort of thing happens on television and things like that all the time. But I guess if we are skewing younger and we're aiming at kids, and I know it wouldn't happen today, but like when I was a kid, man, I can't tell you how many toy guns I had and all that sort of jazz. If I saw it, I don't remember it being a big deal as a kid, but I certainly, in researching this episode, read about that. Do you remember that particular vignette or any backlash that came because of it?
Yeah, I want to say there were 2 that were done. I want to say the one that with the rifle, but also with the tank and looking down the barrel of the tank as well. So again, this is getting into where the reality of the situation and being in it at the time. When I'll make this point up front before we get into it, the traditional, you look at it, our business, and the traditional heels in this business have always been of foreign descent. So you had your Japanese heel that was reminiscent of, Pearl Harbor, and they were nasty heels. So any Japanese wrestler had to be a heel. You had your Cold War, Russians. You had your German Nazis from World War II. And they were always portrayed as heels because they had fought against the United States. And in all of those scenarios, the United States always came out victorious in the wars, but they had long since passed. The wars were over. The United States had been victorious. There wasn't the news cycle that gave you 24-hour coverage of wars where you could turn on a news channel and see in real time the destruction of said war that you're watching right now. We never had that as Americans. We had newspaper, you had radio, and you had your evening news that told you about what was happening overseas. You saw pictures, you saw, film clips and things, but they were clips. It wasn't consuming, if you chose to, your everyday life. Times have changed. So people are viewing the conflict in a different light through a different vehicle. And while you could get away with bringing in usually a French Canadian to be a Russian or a German because they had a bit of an accent and they could affect that accent to be Russian or German. And most people in Tennessee never had really heard what a German sounds like. So when they hear this person talk, they're from Germany. Well, by God, that must be because they talk funny. They talk funny. So now you're in the 90s. You've got CNN. You've got news channels that are feeding you this anytime you want it. And it's happening in real time. And you turn on your television for entertainment purposes to your wrestling show. And now there's a guy in the ring who is sympathetic to our enemy that I just watched, bomb someplace. And my neighbor's kid is going overseas. My kid's going overseas. It's hitting home in real time in a completely different delivery system. Even if you're, in World War II, your son or your daughter, your neighbor's kids are in the war. Well, there's just they're away serving their country. It was a different view and a completely different psychological effect on people because they didn't see it every day. They didn't get reports from the front lines every single day the way that they did in 1990. And we're playing into that as if, no real war at this point. He's a bad guy. We're the good guys. And it's okay. And I also believe that there was a viewpoint in the country, and even as time has gone on, that even at home, the patriotism wasn't quite as strong as it was in the early 1900s and up until the 60s. And then it became with the Vietnam War where there was, well, wait a minute, I don't like America now because of this war happening in a foreign land. So again, we're getting so much information, some good, some bad, some accurate, some not, but you have access to it now. And that changes the viewpoint of how people are now looking at what they're looking at. And if they're going to get entertainment, I believe that they're looking for an escape from that stark reality that they see all around them everywhere else in real time.
We should talk a little bit about Adnan KC. He's going to be brought in from the LPWA to work with the company here. I guess there's some discussion about, we're going to sue and yada, yada from their side, but they wind up settling and developing some sort of a relationship. What can you tell us about Tor Berg, the LPWA, and Mr. Adnan?
I don't know nothing about Tor or the LPWA, but Adnan al-Kaisi, Iraqi, who came over 50s, 60s, but he came and went to Oklahoma. Paul Bosch actually got him in because he was a wrestler in Iraq and got him to go, and he played football, he wrestled, and then got into wrestling because that's what he knew, that's what he loved, and wrestled, as a journeyman, always a baby face. Then he became Billy White Wolf and was portrayed as a Native American. Very, very popular, did very well at that. And then, as time went on, went back to his roots as a heel, Iraqi. And now with everything going on with Iraq, and I think people previously kind of didn't know what Iraq was, where it was, or who it was. And now there was a face attached to it, Saddam Hussein and Adnan, again, they exploited it first in the AWA, and then we brought him in here because he was real. He was the real deal. He actually knew Saddam Hussein in school. They were friends. Same age, same everything.
There's a report out that you guys actually considered calling him Saddam KC. Do you recall that? Was that ever thrown around?
I don't think so. If anything, somebody had said it, it was just to change the name, but it was, look, Sheikh Adnan al-Kaisi was,
it's a badass.
We dropped the Sheikh part of it because we made him a general. People understood, the general part of it, and made him a general. But his real name, I thought, was authentic enough and worked.
Talk to me a little bit about why the need for a second like this. Do you come to that realization that, hey, we're going to need somebody to be with Sarge on the heels of the brother love thing? Like, we knew as wrestling fans and WWF fans more specifically to hate brother love. So his association with you, okay, we get it. He's a heel. But given what's happening across the world now, is that the thinking? Hey, if we present this guy, now it's easier to process, like, because I think some fans would just see like the photo we're looking at right now on YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com. If you didn't see the left side of your screen and you just saw the right side of your screen, you'd say, oh, hell yeah, Sergeant Slaughter. You need the pairing in order for it to really click that, oh, wait, this isn't the Sergeant Slaughter I remember.
Exactly. Look, Adnan looked like the heels that were being portrayed on every, news station. And he looked very similar to Saddam Hussein. And same age, same country, same everything. And Adnan, also, Adnan was conflicted because Adnan still had family in Iraq. And Adnan was sympathetic. The truth be told, Adnan was trying to get his family to America. And Adnan loved, United States of America for all the opportunities that it gave him, and hated everything that was happening in Iraq. So he was very conflicted, because here he's portraying, Iraq this and Saddam Hussein and all this other stuff. But in reality, he's fighting to get his family out and get them to safety in America. So, a lot of just intricacies in this whole story of where we were at the time, and we were just running fast, and things were moving very quickly. So you're trying to stay ahead, but at the same time, shit's moving all around you.
It's interesting to see this. Hey, America's gone soft, and now we're going right into the Iraqi stuff. And we've talked about this a lot in our WrestleMania 7 episode, but along the way there, we start to see more of the development of the character. And some of it, well, respectfully, comes off a little cheesy. Like when we do the Saturday Night's Main Event NBC special in October of 1990, there's lots of comedy skits in this Oktoberfest themed show. We see Sarge work with Coco Beware, and he actually looks pretty good. But the finish he's using in this era, the $1 Million Man's still here, so we can't necessarily do the $1 Million Dream. We're finding something else. And at least at first, he was doing like an atomic noogie. I don't know another way to say that, but it's kind of silly. What'd you think of this?
Have you ever had that done to you?
Yeah, it looks like he's getting a massage. My wife pays to get that done once a month.
Now, if you've ever had someone do it to you for real, it's very painful. And it was kind of like as you're looking for finishes and different things for him to do to everybody.
Okay.
It became like, all right, a claw, a heart punch, that kind of shit. And this was something that hadn't been done. And I don't think it works. I don't think, many people have actually had that done to them the way that you can do it, where it is very painful and you can subdue somebody like that. But yeah, I think to the general public, and it was close. I think that people thought, this is kind of like the Cobra Clutch. It's not going to be the $1 Million Dream and things like that. It just, experimenting, trying new things and seeing what sticks.
I realize this maybe doesn't make sense with the benefit of hindsight, but I want to remind everybody that business is going down in this era, and we're trying to find something to catch fire, if you will. But the result of business continuing to dwindle is we're going to start making some cutbacks. We're going to run fewer shows during weekdays. We're going to combine some crews. And as a result, some people are going to lose their jobs. One of those is Nikolai Volkov. It's time for him to go away and learn a new hold, maybe, as JR might say. So Sergeant Slaughter is going to beat him and injure him in order to explain the absence. Duggan runs in to make the save. But when Sarge first comes back, he's spending a lot of time with Nikolai. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Nikolai here in a few years. Tell us about Nikolai working with Sarge and what their relationship was like. And that had to be a big deal for Nikolai to have an opportunity to work with a guy who's clearly headed for the main event spot again.
Yeah, look, there was familiarity there with Nikolai Volkov and Sarge. They were best of friends and had worked, both sides, with Sarge as babyface, Nikolai as a heel, and now vice versa. So it was kind of a natural Nikolai in this respect, representing America, and Sarge, the American hero, representing Iraq. So it was a way to get Sarge and an American opponent, if you will, and get Sarge victories coming in and decisive victories. And was Nikolai's job at that point.
We start to see some of the house show receipts, gate receipts come down a little bit. The only $100,000 house over the weekend here, as we're talking about November, is Nassau Coliseum. It does $114,000, and that's the lowest New York gate in quite a while, just 7,300 fans there. Richfield, which is the suburbs of Cleveland, does under 100 grand. All the other shows are somewhere between 50 and 85. When you take a look back, it's easy to look back with the benefit of hindsight. Was there anything that you could have been doing here, and we'll call it the fall of 1990, to pull the nose up on this thing?
I don't think so. The country was changing as well, and people were scared. There were early in the fall, kids are going back to school, but also you had a different feeling in the country that do we shit you not, there's talk about, do we want to reinstitute, the bomb drills and things of this nature? Are we going to get there? It was a new and different feeling just in the country itself. And people were scared. Gas prices are going up, and the threat of being cut off from, our Middle East gas supply is that real? People are cutting back, and people are scared. Everything was down, and I think that when we are a luxury expense, you don't have to go to wrestling. I'd see it on TV on Saturday morning. I'll be fine. And little Billy and little Susie can stay home on Saturday night when they're in town. It was across the board. I think everything was down. Everybody was having, their attendances affected. Food and beverage in places. I mean, it was across the board. And we probably got hit the hardest because, again, when you're looking at your priorities for the week, is, feeding your family, having a roof over your head, and you need, you've got your job and you gas in your car to get to work every day. That supersedes going to go see the WWE and go see this live event. And that was an expense that people just weren't willing to make. And yeah, it was a tough time.
It comes out that it's a tough time everywhere. So much so that Dusty Rhodes is looking to leave and maybe go back to the NWA. Joe Pedicino is saying he's going to start a new wrestling promotion, and maybe people are looking to go there. There's lots of people trying to figure out, hey, what's next? But there's a report that says, hey, when Nikolai's out, it's going to be Sarge and Dusty Rhodes working all the house shows. As best I can tell, they only worked actually 2 house shows against each other. One of which wound up being a tag match on MSG. It was General Adnan and Sergeant Slaughter against Dusty Rhodes and Jim Duggan. Do you think Dusty didn't want to work with Sarge, or was it time for Dusty to just go?
No. Dusty wanted to go book Atlanta. That is what it boils down to. Dusty had an opportunity to go back and be the boss in Atlanta and take over the book in Atlanta. And Vince had told him, anytime that you want to leave, Dusty, you're free to leave. And Dusty had that opportunity in front of him and left.
Well, here's an opportunity.
It had nothing to do with it. Was all that opportunity for Dream in Atlanta, and there were no hard feelings. It was okay. Tell me when you need to finish up.
Well, here's something that is an opportunity that I can't believe exists. Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, and even your stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And then Lumen will give you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you'll know exactly what's going on with your body in real time. And Lumen gives you tips to keep on top of your health game. Now, I got to tell you, I've learned a lot about this from my wife. She has started her fitness journey and starting to do some fitness competitions. And I have heard lots of information out there. Like, I think we've all heard of fasting, but with Lumen, you can figure out, hey, that's not a one size fits all thing. You can see exactly what's going on with your body in real time and adjust. For example, a friend of ours who'd been using Lumen had been doing like 18-hour fasts, but they saw that after 10 and a half hours, well, it started to change. And it was no longer, the fasting was no longer to their benefit. It was actually hurting them. I wouldn't have ever even known that was a thing. Lumen is going to help you understand what's going on with your metabolism. And that's not just for losing weight. That's for brain function too. Like, your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything, everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits. Yes, easier weight management, but also improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep. I think you're even sharper at work. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health with each breath. Lumen's recommendations are designed to improve your pre- and post-workout fueling for better performance and recovery, so you can power through your toughest workouts and add on muscle mass. This is the real deal. My wife is using it. She's in love with it. And we can't believe this is real. Like, imagine this image in your mind. We've all seen it before. You see a dude running on a treadmill and he's got that mask like at the doctor's office. This is what that does, but now it's in your house. You can do it first thing in the morning. You don't have to set up an appointment and next April I'm going to run on a treadmill and put on a mask. No. You can do this every single day and know exactly what your body needs. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/wrestle to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/wrestle for 15% off your purchase. And we thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. This is groundbreaking technology, folks. Go take a look right now. LUMEN.me/wrestle.
I just want to thank Lumen for sending me mine so that I could get started. And my son set it up and he uses it. And it's, you get to learn a lot about yourself. And trust me on this one, a lot of things everything that we plug here, we use and we try them and we make it a part of what we do so that we can speak about it as an actual user. And I'm an actual user. Just got it all set up. Got the app on my phone right here. And it's a wonderful thing.
It'll tell you every morning when you breathe.
I don't think I show you all that. There's my Lumen app there. And by God, I would encourage you, man, give it a shot and just get into it. And once you get into it, you'll start to understand and you'll start to see how this can help you, and use our discount code Wrestle. Go to lumen.me and use discount code Wrestle right there. You get 15% off. Come on, man. You can't beat that. Give it a shot.
LUMEN.me/wrestle. Hey man, let's talk about Survivor Series 1990. And
why?
What great respect I have for professional wrestlers and everyone who's a part of it. But this is a head scratcher to me. I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but Nikolai Volkov, Tito Santana, Luke Williams, and Butch Miller, they're going to be, that's the alliance, and they're going to take on the mercenaries, Sergeant Slaughter, Boris Zukov, Pat Tanaka, Mr. Sato. This largely, respectfully, does not feel like main event material. This
anywhere in the world.
I know you're going to say that, and I'm not arguing that these folks weren't attractions and they didn't have a place on the card and all that. But if Silva can throw that graphic back up there, it's hard for me to imagine that you could swap out any one of these names and drop in a Randy Savage or an Ultimate Warrior or a Hulk Hogan. But we're getting Sarge ready for that level.
Yeah.
And this doesn't necessarily feel that way to me. Tell me I'm an asshole.
He single-handedly defeats every one of them.
Well, okay.
Every single one. Look, the Bushwhackers, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, from Down Under. And, of course, you had Nikolai Volkov, main evented all over the world as Nikolai Volkov, as Beepo or Vito or Geeko or whatever the fuck he was of the Mongols. And Tito Santana, probably one of the greatest all-time greatest in the world. So, Sarge defeated each and every one of them single-handedly.
Let's talk about the next TV taping. It happens on the 11th in Tampa. And this is where Sarge is cutting a promo talking about how he's pals with Saddam Hussein. And it does feel like, as we're starting to present more of Sheikh Adnan, we're starting to make him look more and more like Saddam Hussein with the way he dresses, the way he fashions his mustache. Was that intentional? Hey, we want him to look as close to Saddam as possible.
I mean, he already looked as he was already there. I mean, it wasn't like it was there. You know what I mean? The general's outfit, yes. Put him in the general's outfit to definitely give him that military look like Saddam had. But his look, that's his look. That's how he came to us. That's how he looked. That wasn't, hey, do your mustache like this, do your hair like that. That's the way it was. And, the dress, we put him in the general's outfit. We put the headdress on him and all that. So it's, yes, definite attempt to curry favor, if you will, with the Iraqis.
Well, of course, we know that happened in December, but by January 16th, that's when it all changes and it becomes official that America is declaring war on Iraq. I mean, this went from a silly angle to, oh, wow, okay, this is a real thing now. And there's a lot of speculation in January in the newsletters that the WWE had reached out to the USO trying to get Hulk Hogan to go over to Saudi Arabia and rally the troops. And allegedly the USO turned it down, saying that the Iraqi embassy is pretty upset with Vince McMahon because of his portrayal of Sergeant Slaughter and General Adnan. I don't know what of this is real and what isn't. Do you remember there ever being a request for Hulk Hogan to visit the troops in Saudi Arabia around this time?
Yeah, absolutely. There, you look, again, it's when you look at your sources, if you will, if it's, Dave Meltzer, he's just going to make up shit that he wants to make up. And there's nuggets of truth in there that he will then expand upon to make the USO stuff. Yeah, we wanted Hulk to go over there and to do it. It wasn't safe. There was a safety issue for Hulk to go over there and do that. That was the reason it was denied. Was the Iraqi embassy upset with us? Yes, they were. They felt that, portraying them in a negative light was not good. They were upset with us. They didn't like us at all. But the USO folks, yes, they did. The military folks, they did. They weren't like, negative to it. They loved Hulk. They loved us. And that's always been the case. But, a lot of things, get misconstrued. And then when you talk about, okay, well, we're still going to fight through this, like the USO stuff, they're like, well, sorry, man, you're not. Because we're not going to bring him over there because you have any idea how big of a, coup that would be in a victory for them to strike over there while you have an American hero in their presence. Security issue that they would not do. Absolutely no way in hell. And that's the reason that didn't happen. We had a lot of things planned. I'm so glad we didn't do a lot of those things in hindsight. But, we're at the Survivor Series and Sarge is winning the championship from the Ultimate Warrior. And to jump into WrestleMania with Sarge and Hulk for the WWE Championship. And, one of the things that, Jesse Ventura had hit us when they made it legal to burn the flag, what heat that would be for a heel to do that. And, things were getting heated, but we certainly weren't at war when we talked about this shit. I was like, oh, well, what if Sarge burnt the flag in celebration? And I mean, we had debates. Oh my God, did we have debates? And people were very for it and people were very against it. And both sides were very passionate. And it came down to, you have to ask the question, and both sides feel this strong, the answer is no. because it's, a lot of times you will find yourself, and it's a good rule of thumb that if you're second guessing something, you have to ask the question, then usually the correct answer is going to be no. So, those, look, I was one that was, as patriotic as I am, and I consider myself very patriotic and love this country. Well, this is controversial. This will, people talking about us, this will do it, but I'm not sure that the talk's going to be good to do it on, when you see people burning the flag, usually it's a group of people and they're protesting. Let's don't feature someone that has to walk down the street that everybody knows doing it. So I was for it and I was against it. Which again, with that feeling, the answer is no. So we decided not to do it. We had Okerlund make reference to, Sergeant Slaughter and Saddam Hussein backstage celebrating. By God, I've heard they've even desecrated the flag of the United States of America. Now you let your imagination run wild. What no one anticipated was that in the middle of that pay-per-view, that we would declare war on Iraq and that we would attack them during the pay-per-view. I mean, it was real war, and it was something that the American people, many had never experienced before in their lifetimes. And it was, it was scary. It was really, really scary. Because other than Vietnam, which was a war that we were involved in on foreign land, I was not alive for anybody that we were at war with that could possibly invade our country and retaliate. So yeah, it was, I think that people were very uneasy and not sure what to expect. And glued to the television. Because again, you had 24-hour coverage, Scud missiles and all that. I'll never forget it. We were all glued to the TV going, holy shit. So nobody anticipated that. I think that we thought, this is going to blow over, especially when it started. We thought, this is a disagreement. It's going to blow over. It escalated and escalated and escalated and escalated. And the next thing you know, what? You have a tendency a lot of times, I think we as human beings, to, that negative is hanging out there and there's that possibility. But if you don't want it to happen, you're not going to dwell on it. You're going to dwell on no, that's not going to, it can't possibly happen. And it did. It did. And it was a terrifying time for the United States, and people were scared, and it happened right in the middle of a storyline that we had that was intertwined in this. And now it's like, oh shit, this isn't good. And, the show must go on and all that other stuff. I just think that hindsight being 2020, the real time skirmish and the real time story didn't work because it was in real time, and we should have never even touched it.
Do you recall there ever being a conversation or hearing about a conversation between the government and the WWF to say, hey, you got to stop saying he's associated with Saddam Hussein. Like, don't say his name on TV anymore.
Look, we had people in the office that had connections to, obviously, folks in the government that were like, you know what? You might want to take it easy on that. And, not in favor of it. But at the same time, like I said, you had the USO and folks of that nature that they loved the WWE. They loved Hulk, and they loved the patriotic theme, But then there were those in government that didn't like, again, real time. And I think that was the biggest issue. If you had done this storyline 3 years later, I don't think you would have had near the blowback and everything, because the war would have been over. We won. Next. You know what I mean? It was looked at as a victory for the United States. So it wasn't the same feeling. People were scared. Like, man, don't fucking stoke the fire. And that, that's what people were feeling. And it was, unless you were there during that time, you read your history books, you read, all this, you watch documentaries, unless you were there and in it. Those that were, I think they remember it vividly and know how they feel. And there was a genuine feeling of fear in this country that made you second guess every single thing you did. And again, hindsight being 2020, I think if we had that, then wouldn't have done it.
Let's talk about the actual execution of what happened at the Royal Rumble 1991. We know it's going to be Savage and Warrior at WrestleMania. We got to figure out how to get there. So before we see Sarge work with Warrior for the world title as our world title match on the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, we have the Warrior come out to do an interview, and Sherry Martel comes out and starts rubbing on his chest.
Yeah.
And playing with his hair, talking about how much she admires him. And then she gets down on her knees. Now, I got to tell you, as a 9-year-old kid, I didn't really understand what the heck was going on. But as an adult, it's like, boy, this is weird.
Why? She's on her knees begging him. If you want to beg, get down on your knees.
All righty. Later, of course, as you see, if you're watching on YouTube, the Ultimate Warrior is decked out in all red, white, and blue, because of course he is. He's going to take on Sergeant Slaughter. Later in the actual match itself, we would see the Macho King come down and interfere in the match, just absolutely destroy the Ultimate Warrior with a scepter. I mean, for real, it was awesome. But I wonder in hindsight, and again, I don't know shit about wrestling. You're the wrestling guru around these parts. Doesn't that put the heat on Randy Savage most of all? Like, I mean, the belt at this point is sort of in the backdrop, right? Like that match, when this was over, I was more excited to see Randy Savage and Warrior than I was Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter. But maybe that's just
good. Well, that was the object.
Yeah.
To get to the Warrior and Savage retirement match.
When the posters come out for WrestleMania, though, we don't see anything about that. It's Sergeant Slaughter facing off with Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, as a belt nerd, there's been a lot of discussion about the belt that was used in this photo. I have to admit, Bruce, I'm colorblind. What color is the strap of that title that Sarge is holding there?
Purple.
Kind of weird, isn't it?
That was Warrior's belt. That was the one that he won that night.
Yeah. I know. I'm just saying it's for a WrestleMania poster. It sort of stands out.
But they shot it that night.
I understand, Bruce. I'm just saying it's.
Well, you want to change the title. People were used to seeing the purple title.
They weren't used to it. Warrior came out.
I think they were. They know that's the one that he won that night, by God. If he won the purple title and he's in a black title, though, oh my God, they changed the title because they knew he was going to win. No, we went with the title that he won.
Okay.
We'd be talking about, well, I have a second that.
I just think, like if we can throw that photo back up there, Sergeant Slaughter looks like a badass, but it looks like he's holding the girl's belt here, bud.
Well, he was holding Warrior's belt.
Oh, will you stop? Damn it.
You're the one that said it looked like a girl's belt. That's the one the Warrior wore all the time.
When you, as we're cruising towards WrestleMania here, do you think Sarge already has the end in mind for the end of his in-ring career and thinking about being a road agent? Like, is there a timeline for that sort of thing? Are we thinking, hey, this is it and then I'm out? Or
oh, I mean, no, not after WrestleMania, not at all. I think that Sarge is getting in the best shape of his life. definitely the best shape he'd been in a long time at this point. And Sarge was looking for a few more years. I mean, yes, he's looking at ending his career here as a producer, but at this point, yeah, I think Sarge still felt he had a few more years.
How big was the pressure? I mean, we know, we've all dug through the Torch and the Observer and the archives and seen what the talking heads in wrestling were saying. How bad was the heat from mainstream media because of this storyline, as best you can recall?
Brutal. People just didn't, look, they didn't understand it. They didn't like it. And especially for mainstream media who didn't follow it, they didn't get it was just so easy to critique, and you can't argue with them looking at it as though we're in bad taste.
Do you think, and I know that this is silly, but do you think with the benefit of hindsight, this hurt Hulk Hogan in the mainstream? Hurt his credibility? I mean, he was so hot for so long, and then to be in this storyline, I'm wondering if it hurt at all, in your opinion.
No, I mean, I think that time has shown us that people forgive.
Yeah.
People forgive and move on. And maybe in the time, those that wanted to have something to cling on to hate Hulk Hogan had this. And those that loved Hulk were always going to love Hulk.
The reason I ask is I think we all sort of want to hold Vince accountable for this. And we say, man, why wouldn't he just change? Like, it would have been easy to pivot. And I'm sure that.
Change it what?
I'm saying in terms of this Iraqi angle, like we could have come up with something else for Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania.
I mean, that's easy to say, when you're not involved and it's not your company and you have as much invested in it as we did. And it was a gamble. It was a roll of the dice, without a doubt. But, I love it when people say, oh, it's so easy to just do something else.
Well, Bruce, you changed the building. I mean, you were going to sell 100,000 tickets.
Sure,
people shit on it. So you went to the arena, but I'm just saying, like,
no, see, again,
I know there were security concerns. I get it.
They're not concerns. There was actual real, they did the Super Bowl. They secured it. The LA Coliseum doesn't have a outside perimeter to keep people out, like around the stadium itself. Government wasn't going to pay for that, for us to do that. And ticket sales were the shits. I'm not denying that at all. Ticket sales were the drizzling shits. And we had it at that point, to make that decision, the arena with the amount of tickets would be sold out.
Right.
Just move it. Just fucking move it. Take away the negative bullshit. Don't even try to fucking, spend the $400,000 or whatever it's going to cost to secure the thing. Move. Pivot. Make that decision. But the attraction was the attraction. And
well, that's what I was getting
good, bad, or indifferent. Some people liked it. Some people didn't. That's with every attraction. So we went with it.
The narrative we've heard about Vince for a long time, people who don't know him, people who just read things and hear things like we wrestling fans online do, is that when Vince has his mind made up on something, boy, that's it. And there's going to be almost no talking him out of it. That's where I was getting to a minute ago, where it does feel like if you've got people in the office who are saying, oh, maybe you ought to cool it on this. And it seems like there's a ton of bad press. I mean, you just said it was brutal. And now we know ticket sales aren't moving. It seems like almost all common sense would point to, hey, we should just pivot here. But we know that, saying damn the torpedoes is what made Vince successful in the first place. So he goes with his gut and just continues to see the vision. And I get all that. Where I was getting to with Hulk Hogan a minute ago, though, isn't he really maybe the only person who could have changed Vince's mind? Because if he says, man, I'm not doing this, I mean, we'd have to come up with something at that point, right?
Look, hey, man, again, when you're in it and you're making decisions, you're looking at, okay, what is an alternate attraction? We didn't have it. We didn't have it in the book. We didn't have it. So we go with the attraction we've been building for all this time and felt that was the strongest attraction that we had. Hulk winning the title from Sarge. You were already there. Anything else you do would have been so much less than. You didn't have your pay-per-view in the middle of Royal Rumble and WrestleMania to do it. You're there. So, yeah, sure, we could have. It would have been less than it was. And nobody wanted to do that and felt that, okay, you know what? They'll forgive us once Hulk wins the title. And then we move on. And this is a sacrifice we make now to move the title to Hulk and move on.
We should also talk about the extended family. That's not even all that extended. There was a quote from Sergeant Slaughter's father, Rudy, who's 74 at the time. And he says, I'm worried
Rudy
for him.
Remus.
We're in a war. Sure, this is a show, but people are going to get mad. The guys I bowl with say, Rudy, if Bob doesn't watch it, someone's going to shoot him. Bob's played the bad guy, but he's never been a bad guy. What about all those kids that looked up to him and thought he was G.I. Joe? Those kids loved him. How can they possibly look at the TV and understand this? That is something that I really hadn't considered in all this, that he did have a lot of brand equity with the youth of America. He still does. He's still making appearances with that G.I. Joe patch on his jacket. I mean, he's still, doing well.
He will forever be Sergeant Slaughter.
Yes. But in this moment, it does feel like, boy, he's kind of throwing all that he's done with G.I. Joe away because he's banding with the bad guys. But I know it's entertainment and all that jazz. But to see, like, even his dad, who certainly knows what wrestling is, having concerns, he's got a lot of pressure coming from every direction too. Does he know it?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Think of his family. Look, his family, we had to have 24-hour security at his home for his family, for his wife and daughter, because there were people that were making threats against his family and against his home. So that was real life. And those were things that were actually happening. We had security with him 24 hours a day for him and Adnan. It was a terrible time. And what you just read there was a father who's worried about his son. That's just, real life, that he's like, oh God, man, you've gone too far. This is, I don't want my son to be hated. I don't want my son to be hated to the point where the people that don't get it want to harm him. And I get it. I understand that coming from a father, and how he's looking at that and going, son, please. So, there's the fucked upness of those of us in this business sometimes, that the business consumes your life, and the truly great heels. And I still think that to this day, if you are a heel, then you enjoy being hated. You enjoy, a true heel. Now, I don't know that there are any true heels left, or that the audience views anybody as a true, really evil heel. But at that time, they did. And those of us that were heels, we enjoyed being hated. I lived to be hated. I wanted you to hate me. I did everything I could to get you to hate me. And I lived it, and I breathed it, and I relished in it. Sergeant Slaughter was the same exact way. He loved it. He wanted more heat. He wanted all of that. It took its toll on his family. But yet the desire to be the most hated man in the world, that consumed him. And he was willing to risk and sacrifice all of those things. I think if Sarge had it to do all over again, I think he'd do it exactly the same way. And do every single bit of it with no hesitation whatsoever. It's just, unless you've lived it, you can't understand it. And when you try to explain it and put it into words like I just did, those that have never experienced it, never had that desire or that passion for something, just go, well, that's stupid. Great, whatever you think. But those of us that have have lived it and wanted to portray a character, even if that character was yourself, to the point where I want everybody to hate me. Call it a sickness, call it whatever you want. That was the desire. That was the understanding. That's why we did what we did. That's why Sarge did what he did. Because he truly loved it.
Just to add context, for why he's doing this too, Mark Madden wrote in the paper in Pittsburgh at the time that Hulk Hogan was making around $25,000 a week, according to his WWF sources, and Sergeant Slaughter is getting between $6,000 and $10,000 a week for this new role. $10,000 a week in 1991 is over $1 million in 2024 dollars annually. So it is quite a bump from, what he'd probably been making with G.I. Joe. And it's a whole heck of a lot of money to take care of your family. So that's the priority. That's why Sarge is doing this. And hey, man, he's with the big company in a primetime spot, working with Hulk Hogan, headed for WrestleMania. He made a business decision. And that's one that had everybody talking. And believe it or not, when Dave Meltzer wrote an article that appeared in the National, Titan Sports responded and basically called out Dave Meltzer here, and specifically talked about something you and I had discussed earlier. The most glaring and malicious inaccuracy concerns the USO tour referred to in your last paragraph. The WWF did not seek to send Hulk Hogan to Saudi Arabia. The USO initiated the idea and requested Hogan to be among the group of celebrities selected to visit our troops. The USO never turned down anything. They wanted Hulk in Saudi Arabia. The Defense Department nixed the trip. Boy, that's, a minor thing, but a major thing.
You mean Dave Meltzer fucking lied?
Well, hang on now. At the same time.
No, he fucking lied. He made shit up and lied.
He got USO and Defense Department confused.
No, he's an inaccurate piece of shit.
Wow.
He's not a journalist. To say he's a fucking journalist drives me absolutely nuts. Journalists have sources that they name that are reliable, that they actually check with. Dave Meltzer makes shit up and lies. Doesn't check shit. Oh my God, I just got a report. Dave Meltzer's dead. Well, let's report that. Oh, wait, he's not? Oh, well, somebody told me that. How does that feel? But that's what I'm talking about with this guy. He's full of shit. Always has been full of shit since day one.
The Titan representative who was responding to the National, Richard Glover, he's a senior vice president of business affairs and development. It's actually written about even in J.J. Dillon's book. He says, Vince blew his top when he saw the article. He's talking about Dave Meltzer's in the National. He asked me if Meltzer had checked the facts with me. When I told him that, to my knowledge, Meltzer had not called. Vince instructed Dick Glover to write a letter to Frank DeFord, the publisher of the National. I had no prior knowledge that the letter was going out. In Dick's defense, like everyone else who worked at Titan, he was just following orders. In the letter, Dick wrote that Dave Meltzer was incorrect about certain assertions and should have cleared them with me. Glover actually named me in the letter. It was wrong for Glover to go public about the relationship between Meltzer and me because Dave and I had an understanding that I was not to be quoted and our relationship was to be kept confidential. The Glover letter violated that understanding, and it was Titan, not Meltzer, who was guilty of going public with that fact. I was shocked and unhappy that it was handled the way it was, but Vince couldn't have cared less. He was angry at Meltzer and he was venting. If I had been told that Meltzer called, I most certainly would have returned his call, but I had no record of receiving it. I'm not saying Dave didn't make the call.
I guarantee you Dave didn't call.
Right.
Why would he want to get the facts?
It is interesting, though, this gets public. And, I mean, respectfully, just the idea that Vince gives one shit was...
It's one thing when you've got your little underground dirt sheet that you type up in your basement and you send out to people. It's another thing when there's a national publication that is allegedly this respected publication. And they allow someone to go unchecked and print lies without any comeback, any feedback from anybody. You're actually checking for facts. Because now it wasn't Dave Meltzer in his basement typing up his lies and making up his bullshit from talking to his friends around the country. This was him making up lies, making up bullshit, and printing it in a national newspaper. So now the national newspaper they're the ones. This isn't Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer. People that read it are ignorant and don't know. They don't know that they're just reading lies because that's all they had for so long. They assumed because they had absolutely nothing else. They assumed, well, this is all correct because I get it and I subscribe to it and I pay for it. And he sounds like a great guy. But the fact of the matter is, as is now, as is then, as is always has been, all of his shit is based on rumor and innuendo and him just making up shit from hearing things from fans, from the wrestlers that would talk to him. And this was the case. And to paint us in that light in a national publication when it was an outright lie. Yeah, Vince was pissed. I was pissed. I'm still pissed. Because even now, when you go back and Dave loves to talk about, whenever Dave gets criticized, he always says, well, whatever Frank DeFord doesn't think that. There was one time that I was mentioning a thing from Frank DeFord, and he said I was a great journalist or whatever. It's all he ever goes back to. Frank DeFord one time said, I'm a great journalist. I actually didn't say it like Meltzer. I was just saying it like Meltzer. I'd say, Frank DeFord likes me. Yeah. But yeah, that's the reason. That's the reason, man. You're not dealing with his little dirt sheet. You're dealing with a national publication that was printing inaccuracies as fact. And they're supporting someone that doesn't do the work.
Well, somebody who is doing the work is every college football fan this past weekend. Man, I was glued to the television set when I saw Alabama just absolutely put a whomping.
Stop before we go in. I know where we're going, but before we go there, how about McAfee and Nick Saban?
I could not believe.
Look, man, they're friends. Apparently, love each other. To me, man, that is the most odd couple, greatest couple I have ever seen.
I love them on television, especially the behind the scenes visual of Pat dancing around to the music and Nick being very uncomfortable. But the line of the day, I guess there were two.
They bought their team. You bought the best player.
When Nick is
buying players.
Nick's giving a compliment to one of the assistant coaches at Boise State, or one of the head coaches. I forget. A member of the coaching staff at Boise State. He's bragging on this guy, saying, man, I tried to get him for years. We could just never put it together. But I got Boise State, that sort of thing. And immediately McAfee goes, yeah, you probably couldn't afford him because you were paying all your players. And the entire crowd, I mean, you want to talk about what did he just say? It was an unbelievable moment. I'm so pumped that college football is back.
Well, how about Saban's comeback to that, though?
Well, that was a different time in the show.
I understand,
but he's talking about Ole Miss.
You gotta pay.
Oh, I keep hearing about this $20 million roster, but if you ain't paying the right guys, you're shit out of luck. He said shit live on ESPN. Yes. This is Nick Saban.
Patton's done to Nick Saban. I love it.
I love it too, and I can't get enough of it, and that's why I've downloaded and I'm subscribing to the Triple Option podcast. Each week, 3-time national championship coach Urban Meyer, that's right, Nick Saban's old rival, and Nick Saban's first Heisman Trophy winner at Alabama, the first Heisman Trophy winner ever, Mr. Mark Ingram. And how about the WWE 24/7 champion Rob Stone? What?
My good, close personal friend, Rob Stone.
How did that nothing happening son of a plumber get this gig? Hey, they're all teaming up to put together one of the biggest and best college football podcasts around. They're not just going to talk about college, though. They'll talk about pro and just anything related to the culture of the game. They're covering it all, too, dudes. Like the top stories, recent changes, shifts in the game, NIL, come on. The culture surrounding it, everything in between. Urban Meyer brings his championship pedigree perspective as a head coach, We know Ingram's going to bring his insights as one of the best ever players at the position. And Rob provides thoughts of covering 2 decades on the game. I love this show. I can't believe we get Urban Meyer on a podcast. That sounds like a dream come true. But the idea that we hear it from the coach's perspective and from a player's perspective, it's the best of both worlds. And how about the first guest was Coach Saban? I can't believe that's real. Go check out Coach Saban on the Triple Option podcast. They've also got the Oregon head coach, Dan Lanning, on. He's going to be talking about the Ducks and the school's relationship with Nike, something everybody's been curious about. Get into the game today. Follow and subscribe to the Triple Option on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to watch the Triple Option on YouTube. New episodes drop Wednesday mornings. Hey, let's talk a little bit about, I know we're going back and forth about the he said, she said about Meltzer, but I do want to talk about the switch from the building, because my understanding is that the decision was made to make the switch somewhere between January 23rd and January 25th. So the pay-per-view Royal Rumble would have happened on January 19th. So 4 to 6 days later is when we make the switch. All the newsletters had been saying that there were like 20 to 23,000 tickets out. There would be reports that actually it was more like 12,000. But either way, it's 100,000 seat arena, and we're going to make that decision within a week of the Royal Rumble. Do you think on the heels of the Royal Rumble, Vince was like, with this becoming a real war, we can't really turn the heat up on this the way we want to. It's time to pivot. Like that
I don't know how many times I have to say it. War broke out.
No, yeah, that changed it all.
War broke out. Changed the world.
Yes.
Not just the WWE. It changed the world. The day after war broke out, the conversation was, are we going to have the Super Bowl? All major events in the world were targeted. Okay? All of them. The Super Bowl, there was discussion the day after the war broke out. So if you want to put it in Dave Meltzer's narrative, the day after the Royal Rumble broke out.
No, I didn't say that. That's not what I said.
No, yeah, but again, you're leaving out. It's like after the Royal Rumble, you guys made this decision. No, the day after war broke out, the discussion was, are they going to have the Super Bowl?
No, buddy, I said it was about
days after
war.
that. So let me explain. Several days after that, they go in and go, what are we going to have to do to secure the Super Bowl? In that discussion, because WrestleMania was booked in a huge arena in a major market, Los Angeles, that would be a site that was earmarked that, okay, here's something that's going to happen that they may want to go after. Okay, because potentially a lot of people are going to be there. In the midst of that, the number in these few days as they're going through, this is what it's going to cost to secure the Super Bowl. That number was even more to secure the LA Coliseum. The government was willing to foot the bill and did foot the bill for the Super Bowl. They were not willing to foot the bill for the LA Coliseum in any way. The decision was made, we're not going to fucking foot the bill. We only have so many tickets sold. The chance of putting 100,000 people in there by that point is like, yeah, this ain't gonna fucking happen. There was fear in the country. There was no security, even more so. That would have been exploited by everybody that, this security they had at Super Bowl, not going to have that at WrestleMania. So we would not have been able to run the event anyway if we didn't have the security that was deemed appropriate to secure a crowd that size. We already got X amount of tickets sold. Move it to the arena. So all of those things were happening in a very real time, very fast pace, where you had to make a decision. And you had to call it. And that's why it was called. For that reason, because all those things were happening. And there was, you go back, there were no big events taking place. The amount of security that we had to have for the arena was astronomical because it was a big event. And it was an event that was going to be on pay-per-view. So it was still targeted. But to secure the arena and the area around it, much more cost-effective than to try and secure the LA Coliseum. That's the reason. That's what happened.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done.
So as I was saying, if the decision is made to change between the 23rd and the 25th, just a couple of days after that, you guys are taping a show for NBC in Macon. And it's not Saturday night's main event. It's just called The Main Event. And I'm wondering, was there discussion that day about maybe we just scrap this whole fucking storyline? I ask because on that card, you saw Jim Duggan challenging Sergeant Slaughter. But you would also see a tag match with Hulk Hogan and Tugboat taking on Dino Bravo and Earthquake. If we really wanted to, hey, you know what? We've already made the decision that we're going to move the thing. We can probably just flush this whole idea and do something creative here where we did a rematch or we did something with Sarge. But was it ever even considered in Macon here, just a couple of days after you make the decision to move to the arena, hey, what if we just had Tugboat turn on Hogan here? The show is filmed in Macon, Georgia. It's going to air on February 1st, but it's being taped on January 28th. Do you remember that being discussed? I asked because you've told us. Okay.
God, no. Would have been horrible. And again, people already paid for the attraction of Hulk versus Sarge. So now you're going to switch it after those tickets.
Well, the tickets
already been sold.
People were buying it because it was WrestleMania.
No, the event had already been announced before tickets went on sale. Dude, way back when we were going to announce WrestleMania 7, put tickets on sale the day of WrestleMania 6. And we didn't announce until they knew what the attraction was going to be. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess because you had Hulk, but people knew we were building to it, and no. And when you say, did things change? Yeah, things changed drastically. Because on that main event, that is where originally, way back when, where it was going to be at Fort Bragg, and that was going to be where Sarge would have burnt the flag, and Hulk Hogan would have come in and put it out with his body and got the heat on him even more so there.
Where would the Tugboat thing
So a lot of
happen?
things changed.
Where would the Sheik Tugboat thing have happened? I know it didn't happen, but...
Oh, God, that would have happened probably Survivor Series.
Okay.
But we were way off that boat.
To be clear, though, we hadn't begun promoting Hulk Hogan and Sarge for WrestleMania for the title.
No, you couldn't until after Survivor. I mean, Rumble.
Rumble. That's the 19th. Yeah. This is the 20th. But
people knew where we were fucking going.
Oh, no, I get that. But I'm just wondering, like, hey, if there's heat, we've already moved. If the heat's too bad, it's not the right kind of heat. Fuck it. Let's just have Tugboat turn on him and we'll do something that way.
There's a reason we didn't have Tugboat turn on him.
Yeah.
That was a shitty idea. It was. So, okay. So since it's too hot, we're just going to give you guys a shitty fucking match and a shitty idea.
Well, respectfully, the match we got wasn't all that great either, but we'll talk about it.
Top 5.
Sergeant Slaughter is going to retain his WWF title over Hacksaw Jim Duggan because they go DQ. Lots and lots of folks are talking and have opinions in this era in the mainstream about what they should do and what should happen. But we continue the heat on some of our television tapings where Slaughter is going to beat up an enhancement talent so bad that he's supposed to go out on a stretcher. But when the EMT comes out to take care of this poor hapless soul that Sarge just beat up, he beats up the EMT, and now the EMT needs a stretcher. I like that.
There was an EMT the other night I wanted to beat up. Anyway, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Let's hear about this.
No, I can understand that. That's all I'm saying. I can understand that.
Let's talk about Superstars of Wrestling. They're going to interrupt a Brother Love segment with Sergeant Slaughter. This is from the reader pages to I guess issue maybe on a WWF apology about the Iraqi comments of Sergeant Slaughter and how they're pulling for our troops in Desert Storm. And this all airs during a same episode where you're doing this Brother Love Show segment. And some markets saw the promo that we're seeing here, and some aired the apology. Were you just having to make that decision market by market? Or did you send tapes of both to the television stations and they decided, or what the hell happened here?
They were given the choice.
Okay.
So they had the option. We let them know what was in it. We sent them to them ahead of time. And then we sent them if you feel this is inappropriate, you can air this.
Is it true? I mean, around this same time, there were a lot of house shows that were on the books that were supposed to be Randy Savage versus Warrior matches, but Savage is going to be out with a thumb injury. So now they're going with Warrior versus Sergeant Slaughter. And, well, other matches are Slaughter Duggan. And sometimes we would get Duggan versus Adnan. But it's written that occasionally building managers would want no part of this, feeling like this was too big of a threat and the violence may be too big of a risk. Do you remember there being problems at build? Problems?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, there were problems at every level. Yeah.
Okay.
There were problems at every level. There were definitely building managers that felt, I don't want the risk in my building.
Think about that.
Again, we were footing the bill because every single, every event, concerts, sporting events, they all had the same issue that they were targets. Now, you add to that, hey, and we have an event that is portraying an Iraqi sympathizer against, whoever appearing at the building. That increases in people's minds. They don't look at it as entertainment. They look at it, I got a Styx concert coming in here, and I'm getting bomb threats on stuff. I got, Sergeant Slaughter and Adnan LKC coming in, and you ought to imagine the calls they're getting. So yeah, it was a very, very difficult time.
Just imagine that. Like, I know that this isn't real and this isn't something that happens now, but it's hard for me to imagine, like, you bring all the tractor trailers in, you got all the crews in, people are setting up the lighting and the staging, and this cast of characters, the circus pulls up with all these bigger than life costumes and people are getting ready. Then the building manager in some random town says, yeah, we can't have that match. Like, that's just, wow, a different era for sure. Mm-hmm. It was also a different era when it came to the use of Sherry, because Warrior is going to be working with Randy Savage in some of these house shows where he doesn't have the thumb injury or he's okay enough to go. And one of the things they do with Sherry is in this cage match, she winds up getting stripped down to her bra and panties. And I guess there's some ladies and some moms in the audience who aren't thrilled with that. They brought their kids to the show, and now here's this scantily clad woman running around. This isn't quite Attitude Era stuff, but it wasn't common in this era that you would see at a WWF wrestling show where most moms probably think this is just like cartoon He-Man stuff. There's a lady here in her bra and panties. Do you remember there being any pushback about that? Or was that so far down the totem pole it didn't matter in the scheme of things here?
No, there was pushback, and the argument back was, well, she's wearing more than what you would see at any swimming pool and any beach.
Right.
Pretty much anywhere. But the fact that it was a female being stripped down to her underwear.
Yeah.
You got your kids there. I agree with that.
Yeah, we live and learn and we get better. Let's talk about WrestleMania. They go 20 minutes and 24 seconds. Hulk Hogan, our American hero, he overcomes that mean, nasty, evil Sergeant Slaughter. And he gets the win. I think most everybody remembers this pay-per-view more for Warrior Savage. What do you think of them as the main event? I mean, this is, as crazy as it sounds, this is Sergeant Slaughter's only WrestleMania main event. I say crazy because he meant so much to the WWF, but in almost a pre-WrestleMania era. But of all the folks who had a WrestleMania main event, hey, Sarge got one here, which is one more than we can say for Ric Flair. What'd you think of Sergeant Slaughter's WrestleMania main event against Hulk Hogan?
Was what it was. It was what it was. And he main evented with with Hulk Hogan, dropped the championship, and it was all done. So good for him. I mean, he got his main event. I think it was deserved.
There's some new angles that are started right on the heels of WrestleMania. They're doing television tapings in Las Vegas and Reno, where we would see Sergeant Slaughter throw fire at Hulk Hogan to keep the thing going. And Mean Gene would even say something like, Hulk Hogan's been raped. I mean, this is a different era. There's a lot going on here where it's a company in transition, I guess. You see Sherry trying to proposition the Ultimate Warrior. She's getting stripped down to her bra and panties. We've got a fireball here. There was a gun in a promo. I'm not saying it's quite necessarily Attitude Era, but we are certainly taking more risks and trying things, and we'll call it 90, 91, well, really 91 and 92 that maybe we hadn't tried previously. What'd you think of that?
What did I think of what?
Just the evolution of creative, where it gets.
What did I think of it?
A little edgier. Yeah. I mean,
I'm probably one that is always going to be. I like edgy. I like pushing the envelope. Look, you will never know unless you try. And it was an era of trying new things and seeing what stuck and what worked. And some worked, some didn't.
But it was deliberate to take more chances and try new things.
Sure.
We know, thanks to our personal friend John Filippelli, this is your last WrestleMania for a little bit. But I do want to talk about in the fall, where a now babyface Sergeant Slaughter is saying he's had a change of heart and maybe he had an epiphany and I want my country back. That was always the plan, right? When you first introduced, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the plan was always to come full circle and to make him a bigger babyface than ever before on the other side of it.
And to be clear, you might every now and again look down and say, I want my erection back. Well, Blue Chew can help you out. Our next sponsor needs no introduction. Think of it as like a hot tag for your wiener. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part? It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night. So you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew wants you to have better sex. So discover your options at BlueChew.com. Blue Chew wants the entire country rock hard. That's what they told me. Maybe they want to, MAHA, they want to make America hard again. That's the mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options at BlueChew.com, and we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is WRESTLE, and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information, and we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. So, Bruce, by the time you come back, we'll call it the fall of 1992, Slaughter is by and large retired from in-ring competition. And for the next several years, he's largely off television, but he does appear on Saturday morning WWF Mania shows at one point. He's even going to be announced as the new vice president, with Slaughter and Todd Pettengill being very specific that if Jack Tunney were to vacate his presidency, Slaughter would replace him. I don't think that was ever really followed up on. Was there a plan for Slaughter to take over as the on-screen authority figure before he became Commissioner Slaughter in 1997?
Yeah. I think Sarge, lent himself to that. And he was definitely a consideration for that. Absolutely. But then, it was like we didn't really want a president.
What happened with the AWF? I guess there for a while I
don't know what that is.
Well, there was a little startup I think Sarge left the company for a bit to join this. Does any of that ring a bell?
No.
When Gorilla Monsoon stops appearing as the television commissioner or president, whatever you want to call it, how does Slaughter get the nod? Was anybody else considered? Or is it just a no-brainer? Hey, he can make a fine authority figure.
No, I was kind of always the plan with Sarge to step in whatever that authority figure was. And again, we weren't looking for another president. And I thought Sarge was perfect in that role.
He's going to have one more match, at least high profile match. And it happens in late 97 in your house, D-Generation X. Of course, DX has been a thorn in his side as he's been the on-air commissioner. So Hunter Hearst Helmsley is going to beat Sergeant Slaughter in a boot camp match that goes 17 minutes and 39 seconds. And you're probably thinking to yourself, boy, that sounds like a long time for an older guy. Yeah, it was. It was probably not Hunter's favorite pay-per-view match. Would you agree with that?
No, it's actually one of his favorites because he got to work with Sarge. And it was kind of a big kick to be able to work with Sarge and especially do a boot camp match.
Go out of your way to watch it then. Let's all do Triple H a favor and watch his favorite pay-per-view match here against Sarge.
His favorite one of. He definitely enjoyed working with Sarge. Sarge was
I mean, listen, a boot camp match, like tell everybody a boot camp match, Sergeant Slaughter. There was one in Madison Square Garden that people are still talking about all these years later. That's
Pat Patterson, man.
That is the boot camp match, right? That's the one.
Yeah. Insane.
Sarge is largely written off TV at that point. We're no longer going to need that authority figure because here comes Mr. McMahon. But he does briefly appear as one of the Stooges in 1998. He's going to stick around in the company doing some PR. And we know behind the scenes, he was an agent and a producer. How do you think he did behind the scenes as a producer for the WWE?
I don't think I think that Sarge was much better served Sarge helped us identify new talent and help find new talent. I thought that he had a unique eye for that. First one that comes to mind is Yokozuna, that he looked at him and I'd seen Rodney in Alabama as Coquina, the Wild Samoan, brought him in for a tryout. And it was like, he's just not a big Samoan. And it was Sarge. He's like, what if you made him a sumo? And the rest, as I say, is history. Sarge was one of those guys that was great for that one idea every few months that was like, shit, that was good. As far as, putting together matches, I can't really remember to say that, he was really great or not great at that. I think that his passion and where he was best, I think, was kind of like an overall contributor and on screen. But the other thing about Sarge was he was just a great guy to have around because of his experience and his temperament and his personality. I can't help but love him.
What do you think Sarge's legacy will be to wrestling fans?
Just Sergeant Slaughter, man. He was like, in many people, when you go back, those in the Carolinas, those in early, WWE, he was the worst bad guy. He was despised, but I think he was also one of the most, and arguably at one time, the most loved character in the history of the business. And his legacy will live on as being an incredible performer. And the only thing that, I would say is that where people are robbed is not having to, not having the opportunity to ever get to know, Robert Remus. And I'm lucky that I had that relationship and I was able to get to know Sergeant Slaughter and Bob Remus, the man. His sense of humor is different, but great. I mean, it's like Sarge is Sarge. And he's a wonderful man. And I think that his talent is going to etch him in the minds of every true fan that ever studied the business and watched it, because he was the epitome of heel and the epitome of babyface.
And man, just such a big part of pop culture. I mean, not just G.I. Joe, not just the WWF, but there was a period in the late 80s where they were doing even like back when Bigfoot was a thing, these big monster trucks, they would do a tug of war, Sarge versus Bigfoot. Like, he was a pop culture icon, and you can still catch him. Yeah. He's making appearances almost every weekend. I'll even put you in the Cobra Clutch. It's fun to have an opportunity to meet some of your favorite legends that you grew up with as a kid. And I would encourage you to go out of your way to meet the real life Sergeant Slaughter. I'm glad we got to talk about him here today. Is there anything else you want to share about Sarge before we put a button on today's episode?
No, he's just, it's one of those people that you're glad to have the opportunity to meet through your life and through your career, and happy, and better having known him and being able to work with him. So, great guy.
Great guy. And I can't wait for us to catch up with Sarge down the road. But for now, that's it. We'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days. Now they're gone. So now do we have to tell the guy on the other side now to hit stop recording? Because otherwise I've got the feeling that he'll just, he's probably asleep by now. That's your cue, Dave. That's when you hit stop.
You're supposed to hit stop, Dave.
You hit stop.
Have I told you what I'm helping people with in my real life? Yeah, I'm helping them save money over at savewithconrad.com. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Go get yourself a quick quote. Interest rates have improved, and people are realizing, hey, now's a chance to save some cash. And I'm talking to you, if you're still on the fence about buying a house, we can get you out of that apartment, tell your landlord to kiss your grits, and get you into a brand new house. You can do that with 5% down, with 3.5% down. And yes, there are still no money down options available in 2024. SaveWithConrad.com is your first step. We're going to ask you, hey, where are you now and where would you like to be? And we're going to get you on a path to fit those short-term goals, but really meet the long-term goal that we all want. And that's to appreciate the American dream. The American dream isn't to give 29% of your gross monthly income every month until you die to some banker. No, you want to own that thing for real. Your own piece of land for you and your family, your legacy. And we want to help you get one for yourself at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And maybe you've already got a house, but it'd be nice if you could pay a little less. We're routinely finding a way to help our podcast listeners combine all of their debt, and I mean all of it. Credit cards, personal loans, even car payments. Get it into one low monthly payment. Not only is it a better interest rate, it's also a greater tax deduction, but maybe most importantly, a much cheaper payment. We're routinely helping our podcast listeners save $500, $600, $700, even $800 a month. But how much can you save? Find out right now at savewithconrad.com.
You guys, the housing market's really good right now, too, for you folks out there that are thinking of making a change in your overhead or your living conditions. Now's not a bad time to make that move. Nowhere better to do it than savewithconrad.com. He's going to save you money. He's going to be honest. And it's like dealing with a friend, an educated friend. And boy, there's a lot of uneducated and unfriendly people in that world. Conrad Thompson is not one of them.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Jim. Check out our reviews online. You're going to see we've got more than 1,000 5-star reviews. Customer service is what it's all about. We want to be your mortgage advisor for life. So there's no application fee. There's no credit report fee. We just want to talk, man. Hey, tell us where you are and tell us where you want to be, and we'll try to help you get a plan to get there. We want to be your advocate, your humble advocate at savewithconrad.com.
Attaboy, Connie. Look at those cheeks, ladies. Look at those cheeks, ladies and gentlemen. My God.
How could you say no to that, right?
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
SaveWithConrad.com.